2011. The 2011 MLB draft didn't explode instantly, which is exactly why it still gets underestimated. This class was built on patience, development, and delayed dominance, and nearly every impact player arrived years after casual fans stopped paying attention. Garrett Cole went first overall and eventually became one of baseball's most feared power pitchers, stacking Cy Young finishes while routinely touching 100 miles per hour deep into starts. Francisco Lindor followed later in the first round and quietly turned into a franchise-altering shortstop, combining elite defense with switch-hitting production and postseason moments that shifted entire fan bases. Anthony Rendon delivered one of the most efficient offensive peaks of the 2010s, including a historic 2019 playoff run where he hit 6 home runs and posted a 1.287 OPS. But that's not all. Trevor Story became a 30 home run shortstop in Colorado. Blake Snell won a Cy Young after reinventing his pitch usage. George Springer turned into a postseason assassin with multiple World Series defining swings. What makes 2011 unsettling is how many players reached elite status without hype, headlines, or viral moments. Nearly every first rounder reached the majors, an abnormal success rate in a sport built on attrition. This class didn't overwhelm with Hall of Fame certainty, but it reshaped modern player evaluation, emphasizing athleticism, versatility, and patience over instant returns. It was a slow burn draft, but its impact quietly lasted an entire decade. However, this list is only going to get crazier as we move from the least insane draft in 2011 to the most insane draft at the end of the video. 2002. The 2002 MLB draft felt ordinary on draft night, then slowly turned unsettling as star after star kept emerging from every direction. Zach Greinke headlined the class and eventually completed one of the strangest ace careers in baseball history, winning a Cy Young while reinventing himself multiple times as velocity faded. Joey Votto arrived later and became one of the most disciplined hitters ever, winning an MVP while posting a career on base percentage above .410 in an era obsessed with power. Prince Fielder brought instant intimidation, crushing 319 home runs and redefining how quickly a slugger could peak. But it keeps going. John Lester became a postseason monster, winning 3 World Series rings while delivering scoreless October stretches that swung championships. Matt Cain threw a perfect game and anchored 3 title teams. Brian McCann redefined offensive production at catcher with 7 straight All-Star selections. Curtis Granderson blended speed and power into multiple 40 home run seasons. What makes 2002 unsettling is balance. Pitchers, hitters, leaders, and postseason performers all emerged from different rounds with no single trend tying them together. This class didn't rely on one superstar carrying the narrative. It overwhelmed quietly, season by season, until fans looked back and realized half the league's biggest moments traced back to the same draft board. It wasn't flashy, it was relentless. 1993. The 1993 MLB draft didn't just produce stars, it produced anchors, the kind franchises orbit for decades. Alex Rodriguez went first overall and immediately altered expectations for what a shortstop could be, combining power, speed, and durability into one of the most productive careers ever recorded. Scott Rowland followed and quietly became one of the greatest defensive third basemen of all time, pairing elite glove work with consistent offense. Torrey Hunter delivered highlight defense and postseason power while becoming the emotional center of multiple contenders. Billy Wagner arrived from later rounds throwing left-handed heat that touched triple digits, finishing with a career ERA under 2.50 and striking out nearly 12 batters per 9 innings. But that's not all. Chris Carpenter reinvented himself and won a Cy Young while anchoring championship rotations. Jason Varitek became the backbone of Boston's clubhouse during a historic title run. Derek Lee peaked as one of the most complete first basemen in baseball, finishing top 3 in MVP voting. What makes 1993 eerie is how many leadership figures emerged from it. These weren't just stat accumulators, they were tone setters, captains, and postseason stabilizers. This draft shaped playoff baseball across 2 decades, not with flash, but with reliability. Every October, someone from 1993 seemed to be standing in the middle of it. 2005, the 2005 MLB draft hit like a meteor because the damage was immediate and unavoidable. The first round alone felt unfair. Justin Upton arrived as a teenage phenom and delivered explosive athleticism from day one. Alex Gordon became a defensive nightmare at third base while anchoring a championship lineup. Ryan Zimmerman turned into the face of a franchise, delivering clutch postseason hits and elite defense. Ryan Braun won Rookie of the Year, then MVP, while redefining middle-of-the-order production. Troy Tulowitzki brought power and elite defense to shortstop, posting MVP-caliber seasons before injuries intervened. But it gets crazier. Andrew McCutchen became the heartbeat of Pittsburgh baseball and an MVP winner. Jacoby Ellsbury turned speed into a championship weapon. Jay Bruce delivered consistent power. Matt Garza anchored playoff rotations. Nearly every significant name came from the first round, something almost unheard of in baseball's development-heavy system. This class broke the idea that the draft required patience. These players arrived fast, dominated early, and reshaped franchises almost instantly. While later rounds lacked the same depth, the sheer concentration of elite talent at the top makes 2005 terrifying in hindsight. It was a reminder that sometimes the board lines up perfectly, and when it does, entire eras change overnight. 1976, the 1976 MLB draft quietly assembled one of the most influential collections of players the sport has ever seen. Rickey Henderson emerged and rewrote the rules of leadoff baseball, finishing with 1,406 stolen bases and an on-base presence that tortured pitchers for decades. Wade Boggs turned batting into science, winning 5 batting titles while barely striking out. Alan Trammell anchored Detroit baseball for 20 years, pairing elite defense with consistent offense. Jack Morris became the ultimate big game pitcher, winning 254 games and delivering a legendary 1991 World Series performance. But that's not all. Mike Scioscia controlled games behind the plate and later became a championship manager. This draft blended speed, contact, leadership, durability, and postseason dominance in a way few others ever matched. What makes 1976 special is longevity. These players didn't just peak, they stayed. They adapted as the league changed around them. They defined how their positions were played. Multiple Hall of Famers came from different rounds, different profiles, and different philosophies. This wasn't a trendy draft, it was a foundational one. The influence of 1976 lingered in lineups, dugouts, and front offices long after the final box scores faded. 1,971. The 1971 MLB draft didn't just deliver stars, it delivered position-defining legends who warped expectations for an entire generation. Mike Schmidt emerged and quickly separated himself as the most complete third baseman the sport has ever seen, blending elite defense with 548 home runs and 3 MVP awards. George Brett followed and became the emotional core of Kansas City baseball, winning batting titles in 3 different decades, while anchoring multiple postseason runs. Jim Rice turned fear into a strategy, winning an MVP and leading the league in home runs, RBIs, and slugging during his peak. But that's not all. Keith Hernandez revolutionized first base defense, winning 11 Gold Gloves while pairing it with an MVP season built on-base dominance. Ron Guidry exploded onto the scene in 1978 with a 25-win season and a microscopic 1.74 ERA, becoming the ace of a Yankees dynasty. What makes 1971 terrifying is positional overlap. 2 of the greatest third basemen ever came from the same draft. Multiple MVPs emerged without sharing stylistic similarities. Power, contact, defense, leadership, and post-season moments all arrived from different directions. This class didn't rely on one superstar to define it. It stacked legends at premium positions and let them dominate independently. Decades later, debates about third base greatness still start and end with names from this draft. When people talk about foundational talent, 1971 keeps showing up, not loudly, but permanently etched into baseball's DNA. 1983. The 1983 MLB draft turned chaos into history and then dared the league to keep up. Roger Clemens slipped to 19th overall and responded by becoming one of the most dominant pitchers ever, winning 7 Cy Young Awards while terrorizing lineups for 2 decades. Wade Boggs arrived and treated hitting like a math equation, stacking batting titles and posting on base percentages that felt unfair in any era. John Franco quietly piled up saves with surgical precision, finishing with over 400 career closures. But it gets crazier. Ellis Burks delivered explosive power speed seasons. Mike Greenwell anchored Boston lineups with consistency. This draft didn't produce volume. It produced overwhelming value at the top. 2 players alone combined for nearly 200 career WAR, a number most drafts never approach collectively. What makes 1983 unsettling is how close it came to perfection with so few hits. Boston didn't flood the league with bodies. It dropped elite weapons into it. Every October, Clemens or Boggs seemed to be part of the conversation. Every era from the mid-80s through the early 2000s felt their presence. This wasn't a draft built on luck. It was a draft built on missed evaluations by everyone else. When a single scouting slip creates decades of dominance, it stops feeling accidental. 1968. The 1968 MLB draft stands apart because it wasn't just great, it was instructional. The Dodgers rewired their entire scouting process and accidentally created the most efficient talent haul the sport has ever seen. Steve Garvey became an Iron Man, stacking MVP votes and anchoring first base for a decade. Ron Cey brought power and postseason toughness, delivering clutch October swings. Bill Buckner compiled over 2,700 hits across 22 seasons, surviving multiple eras of pitching evolution. Davey Lopes redefined the leadoff role with speed and intelligence, helping fuel pennant runs year after year. But that's not all. This single draft produced 11 future major leaguers who combined for nearly 235 WAR, an absurd total no other class has ever matched. This wasn't luck, it was process dominance. Players arrived from every round, every background, every projection tier. What makes 1968 uncomfortable is how repeatable it looked on paper, yet no one ever duplicated it. One franchise used one draft to shape a decade of contention. And before we go any further, only cool people are subscribed to this channel, so hit that subscribe button before we go any further. This class didn't just win games, it changed how teams thought about drafting forever. 1989. The 1989 MLB draft feels illegal in hindsight because too many inner circle legends came from the same pool. Frank Thomas arrived and immediately became the most intimidating right-handed hitter of his era, finishing with 521 home runs and a career on base percentage over .400. Jeff Bagwell followed and blended power, patience, and athleticism into an MVP career. Jim Thome emerged later and quietly crushed 612 home runs with postseason moments that defined franchises. Trevor Hoffman turned ninth innings into nightmares, piling up 601 saves with surgical calm. But that's not all. John Olerud delivered elite contact seasons. Brian Giles posted monster on base numbers. This draft produced a record for Hall of Famers, something no other class can claim. What makes 1989 terrifying is balance. Power hitters, closers, patient on base machines, and leaders all peaked at different times, extending the draft's relevance across decades. There was no single era where this class faded. It just kept showing up. When people argue about offensive explosions, relief pitching evolution, or Hall of Fame thresholds, names from 1989 dominate the discussion. This class didn't sneak up on history. It bulldozed it. 1985. The 1985 MLB draft stands alone because it produced the most overwhelming collection of peak dominance baseball has ever seen. Barry Bonds entered the league and became the most complete offensive force in history, winning 7 MVP awards and posting seasons that broke statistical logic. Randy Johnson arrived raw and eventually turned into a 5-time Cy Young winner who overwhelmed hitters with velocity and fear. Barry Larkin redefined shortstop leadership and offense, anchoring a franchise for 2 decades. John Smoltz became a postseason weapon, excelling as both a starter and closer, while winning a Cy Young. Rafael Palmeiro delivered one of the most productive careers ever recorded, reaching both 3,000 hits and 500 home runs. But it gets worse for every other draft. These players overlapped. Their peaks collided. MVPs, CY Youngs, Gold Gloves, and postseason moments all emerged from the same year. This class didn't just produce greatness, it stacked it. Multiple inner circle legends shaped how baseball was played, evaluated, and debated. No other draft altered offensive philosophy, pitching dominance, and positional expectations this completely. Every great class gets compared to 1985, and none survive the comparison. If you like this video, consider watching this next one, which YouTube thinks you are going to really love.